Hello, welcome to the No Ordinary Obsession podcast. Today is Thursday, March 22nd, 2012. Today is episode 0, our pilot for the podcast. My name is Jared. I am tonight's moderator. With me, I have Mike and Rob. Guys, you want to say a little something about yourself?
My name is Mike. I am the editor of No Ordinary Obsession, the blog, and I am also Salient Mind, the blog post author.
I'm Rob. You might see me on there occasionally. Not very frequently, though. Screen name Kesdrix. You'll hear little pieces thrown in from me tonight from time to time.
Okay. And again, I'm Jared. I'm also on the blog, No Ordinary Obsession. If you want to go check that out right now, that's noordinaryobsession.wordpress.com. Yes, it's WordPress because we're not going to pay for that. So basically, we're going to explain what the podcast is going to be about. For the most part, we're going to be talking about role-playing games, tabletop role-playing games mostly, because that's our weird obsession, if you want to call it that. We're also going to get into a lot of other stuff, though, mostly video games, comic books, probably a lot of anime, knowing us.
Anime, movies, and also, you never really know. Internet trivia, memes, whatever really kind of floats our boat. But the main thing is going to be role-playing, and most things are going to be tied back to role-playing.
Yeah, it's going to be nerd-related somehow. Nerd, geek, whatever you want to call yourself. That's what we're shooting for. That's our audience. Hopefully. All one of you.
A bit of a disclaimer, we are not going to censor what we speak about. Some of the content that we speak about people may find offensive, although we will not go out of our way to offend anyone. However, such as tonight's topic, we will be talking about the morality in video games and role-playing games. Topics such as sex and violence will come up.
They're bound to come up.
No pun intended there, right?
Maybe. We'll see. Alright, so let's get right into it for tonight. Tonight is the theme of morality. So let's start out with the video game industry. How does morality in the real world tie into or go against morality in video games?
I would say in most games, morality is built in a pretty non-denominational, universally agreed upon system. In the sense of things that are considered evil are killing people and lying and stealing, and things that everyone pretty much doesn't want to happen to them. And the good things are resolving issues without violence and giving things to people when it belongs to them.
Generally working for the greater good.
Working towards the greater good. And also doing good things without extorting people for money afterwards.
Because usually, that's the case.
So, that's... That is a major success of the video game industry. Different game companies have done it in different ways, right?
Right.
So,
well, we've been talking a lot about BioWare recently, because as the topic comes up, we realize that probably all of us play a lot of BioWare games that we weren't aware of. And they do a great job in morality systems. Each game system, each series they have is almost completely different from the next. Some similarities, but they do change a lot.
I would give them an A. I mean, the only reason why I would give them an A+ is because there's sometimes the conversation choices that lead to either a positive morality option or a negative morality option aren't always clear when you make them.
Right.
And that's my only real issue.
But that's a perfect example of what we're talking about with real-world morality versus video game morality. Video game morality is set in stone. It's programmed into the game. Real-world morality, what you see as a little iffy, someone else might seem perfectly fine with.
In video game morality, though, too, there's also very much so a black and white all the time. You can make either the good choice or the bad choice. In real world, there's always some sort of middle ground that you can take.
Well, what's an example of a video game morality system where as you're making the choice definitively whether it's a positive or negative move for your character? Whether you're going to gain your light side points or dark side points, or your Paragon or your Rebel, or whatever it may be in that system. What's one game that does that definitively?
I feel like Dragon Age 2 does it more definitively than any other game. Even though they don't have a typical morality system where you have a good side and a bad side of your choices, the choices are clear that you make, and they have in-game effects to how you interact with non-player characters.
Right.
And it changes how the story is played. So I feel like BioWare really did a good job in Dragon Age 2 to make that a defined choice.
Okay, so Dragon Age does a pretty good job there. I'm going to agree with you on that, because when you go and make your decisions, it does tell you what path you're taking.
Right. And it also, the in-game effects are based on whether or not characters agree with you, which I feel is closer to the real world than any actual morality system. Other than going into prison, your choices or criminal punishment, the only thing your choices in life really affect are your interactions with other people.
Okay. Let's go into the Old Republic. The Knights of the Old Republic, specifically. Because that was one of the first BioWare games that I've played that, I kind of lost entire weeks on. I think that they did a phenomenal job with the Jedi thing, having light side, dark side. Every decision you made, that was a positive decision. Obviously, it netted you light side points and vice versa. But, they always gave you that option. You always had the option to do the wrong thing. But it always comes back to affect the character, to affect the storyline, to change what your options are going to be in the future. And sometimes that one wrong decision can kind of lead the game in a whole new path. Kind of like a choose-your-own-adventure game, almost.
Okay.
Past that, have you guys played that game nearly as much? Or
I have to say that's your area of expertise there, Jared.
I played it for a little bit, but I feel like most of BioWare's games have followed similar tracks in terms of the morality system. Dragon Age 2 sort of was different, but for the most part, they've just been enhancing a single morality system over the course of their game creation career.
Right.
From Old Republic straight through Mass Effect, it's like an unbroken chain of just tweaking the system to be more what they want it to be.
Right. Well, speaking of Mass Effect, since that's what's come up, obviously Mass Effect 3 has just come out, a week ago? Maybe 2 at this point.
2 weeks.
Since you did me the disservice of leaving it at my house, I've played the game for, I think, we're closing in on 20 hours already in a matter of a few days. I really like what they're doing with the morality system there. I did notice that occasionally they actually block out some of your options.
Yeah, based off of how
you've acted in the past. So I understand why they do that. Don't like it. I like the option of occasionally being a prick, even if I'm a nice guy. So I don't know, how do you feel about that?
The system, how it works is the more it's like a certain level of charm that people possess or influence people possess based off how they act. So I get why they did it. And I think that the trigger situations where you have to choose in a moment what you're going to do is what enables that good guy to act like a dick that one time.
Okay.
Whereas those conversation options they block out are for like a little bit more, are for things that are based purely off of your credibility as a person.
Right.
Which I kind of like and get, but I understand why you would find it frustrating, because there's been times in the past where there's a situation where I really don't want to be a nice guy because the person I'm talking to is just that much of a dick.
Yeah.
And I just want to be able to, screw them over as badly as possible, and there's no trigger option.
Yeah, well, the trigger option, I think, for those of you who haven't played the game, the trigger option he's talking about is that when you're playing this game, you'll come up with a role-playing situation, and the characters will be talking, and someone will say something infuriating to your character. And on the screen, you'll see a little flashing option to smash that right trigger button, which, as we all know, gamers, if you see a flashing button on the screen, your first reaction is to mash it. So they're just trying to trick you with that one, but I love that. There have been plenty of times where I've been so frustrated, I just want to slam that button, but I'm playing a character who is supposed to be a paragon. So
And sometimes if you hold out, Paragon options become available to you.
Yeah.
So you never know if you're going to get a Paragon option or not. And I think that's one of the really fascinating things they started doing in Mass Effect 2 that they've carried over to Mass Effect 3.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we've done enough. Jerking off BioWare for a while. We agree they're awesome. Let's move on to something Rob actually knows to talk about. So, what are the games that you can bring up with morality based?
Probably one of the longest term franchises that have been around using a morality system in the video game world that I can think of is your Bethesda series, Studios, that is, Fallout series. The original Fallout came out, early mid-90s for the computer?
Right.
Yeah.
And that system, right from the get-go, I mean, it was, kind of an action-adventure, turn-based, shoot-'em-up kind of game, but throughout the entire game, you had karma points that you were either gaining or losing based off actions, and it could be done through something as simple as opening up a locked chest in somebody's house to shooting the neighborhood kid out on the street, at which points then you'd basically become a pariah of the entire town, and everyone would become hostile towards you and run you out immediately. And every time you came back to that town, you were run out immediately. So basically, any of the storyline functions of that town became null and void. Whereas if you were a really good character, going around basically completing everyone's side quests and making sure everyone stays alive in the party and everything, had people becoming, willing to work with you and giving you better deals in some of the shops. And Fallout is, they took some time between Fallout 2 and Fallout 3. What was it?
10 years?
Yeah. So, it was a little while before they finally
decade.
Yeah, came out with that for a modern-day gaming system. But I think they did a good job in bringing it over into the current day and age.
Well, I absolutely agree. I remember when you first told me about Fallout, a long time ago, when we were in high school, and the first thing you brought up was the morality system, karma points to me, because of how in-depth the world was. So,
actually, I think the first thing I might have brought up was hacking my save game file to drop all the hidden weapons and stuff like that into one of my characters.
Of course.
Things, but
of course. Yeah, Rob the Power Gamer.
Well, I had to be able to break the system somehow.
Yeah. Well,
how did your karma points get affected through doing that?
Actually, it worked out for my better, because then I could just make sure that I snuck around with perfect stealth boys every time I needed to go ahead and steal things, and
Well, so now, did that affect the actual gameplay? Because another game that used karma as their stat point, basically, was the old Shadowrun series for Sega. And I know I'm going way back, I'm dating myself now, but when I used to play Shadowrun, this is a game where every time you completed a mission, or went on a run, you would gain karma points, and when you eventually went to a hotel and stayed the night, you could spend those to up your stats. So that's how you build your character up. Basically, there was a little cheat in the game where if you entered a cheat code in the beginning, then you could unlock an extra screen on one of the terminals in the city and give yourself either 250,000 credits or, unlock powers, new deck boards, whatever. And there was the option for plus 10 karma points. So you do this a dozen times, let's say, and now you're maxing out your character stats. But the flip side of that is, if you go and save the game now, your file is forever corrupted. You can't unlock the same endings in the game as you could if you had played it straight through and did it legit. So is there a similar system in Fallout? Or whatever. What were you talking about?
That was editing a saved game file through a hex editor. And it was all backdoor kind of stuff on the CPU.
Okay. The true nerd way, yeah.
Yeah. No, that wasn't any sort of Game Genie kind of stuff or anything, or in-game, trophies or Easter eggs that they left or anything like that. That was
just straight crack.
Yeah.
That boils down to whether or not, as a player, you feel the same experience playing the game with a cracked save. And for Rob, obviously, that wasn't an issue.
No. So again,
well, once you play through the game, like 4 or 5 times, then you want to go ahead and be able to use the assault minigun right from the beginning.
I'm not judging you. I'm just saying that in general, it's
I'm
not
judging him. You're a cracker, sir.
Well, I mean, if there is one thing I can do, it's figure out how to break a system.
Yeah, Rob is known for finding the weakness in anything, whether it's min-maxing a character, a role-playing game, or just becoming OCD about
I
finding.
don't exploit it though.
So
All right, well that's
let's start ranking on Rob.
yeah. Okay, no, that's a different podcast altogether. We can get into. That could be more of a GM centric kind of thing. I mean, all right. At this point, let's try to move on. Let's get to the crux of it: role playing.
Yes.
So morality in a role playing setting. Now, I know the three of us have probably three completely different sets of theories on this. Let's try to stick to like the core systems that we usually play.
I don't even think that it matters so much system-wise. When it comes right down to it, morality is morality.
No, but in certain systems, right, like D&D, the morality directly affects the game mechanics, and that's I think where me and Mike start to get into it. So let's start you off on choose a system and let's run with that.
All right. So let's start with D&D.
Okay.
Let's just get right to it.
3.5, let's
3.5.
because 4th edition still doesn't exist.
What is 4th edition?
I have no idea what you're talking about. Continue.
Okay, so D&D describes the different moralities in the book as they pertain to the world, the game world. The standard adventurer, in my mind, a D&D adventurer, does not conform to real-world morality, and the moralities described do not conform to real-world moralities.
Right.
And I have a pretty strict view of what morality is in my personal life.
Okay, so let's take a second there and say, first of all, I completely agree with you that D&D morality and real-world morality have pretty much nothing in common, aside from, the cardinal sins, and even then it's a little iffy. When we're talking about morality in Dungeons & Dragons, you're talking about the alignment system.
Right.
The alignment system is based off of good, evil, chaotic, lawful, or neutral. So,
By the way, Rob has gone and broken out the book.
Rob has broken out a book. We do have a full section of reference material behind us. But when you're talking about an alignment system, that's how we're gauging morality in the system.
Right. Now, my issue with the morality system, of playing a morality system as defined by a book, is that the one paragraph description does not encompass everything that happens in game, obviously.
Right.
For each one.
I think that the alignment system does have effects on in-game mechanics. But those alignment systems are simply labels for the character. A character is going to act in their own persona and their own methods. I think it's simply a matter of a combined agreement between your GM and the player as to what label you want to give that character, and therefore apply the proper mechanics for it.
Right.
I believe the social contract is the primary factor in any sort of game in terms of morality, in terms of comfort level, in terms of what's acceptable in a group and what's not. I totally agree. But what I'm saying is you have 5 different minds around a table, you have one morality system, and then you have spells that do things like protect against evil. You have classes which force you to act according to certain alignments, and it is clumsy and clogs up role-playing.
I see. I see where you're going with the mechanics there, but I disagree that it should get in the way of role-playing. Because every single book that's ever been written in any role-playing system ever, at some point, always gives you the same kind of spiel where it explains that these are not hard set rules, these are guidelines. And I think the morality systems, the alignment system in particular, that's a perfect example of a guideline. Now, it's necessary because of the fact that you might have, let's say, a character with damage reduction. And if that character's damage reduction versus good or evil or chaos or law then you have to have a label on the character.
Only because you've put a label on it in the first place.
Right. But that's the kind of character you want to play. That's where you're getting that label from.
But why not just play the character you want to play?
If there is such a thing as a spell that is, protect from evil, then you have to have a line in the sand of, at what point do we consider that character evil? And are we going to apply that label to that person?
But first of all, why is there a need for a spell such as protect from evil? Not just protect when you already have all these creature types, you already have all these other indicators of what a creature is, right? So you have a werewolf. A werewolf is a monstrous humanoid. Why not just a spell that says that's just protect from monstrous humanoid? Or protect from monstrous subtype?
Well, then how, as a caster in the game, metagame? That's the thing. If you're a paladin or if you're a cleric and you're casting a protection from evil spell, you as a character have a clear-cut morality of good and evil. But as, let's say you're a mage and you're going to say, alright, protection from monstrous humanoid, what's your version of a monstrous humanoid? I think that's a little more of a...
Is that Bob coming down the street with a wart on his head?
Well, no, that's... A monstrous humanoid is defined in the system.
So is alignment.
But I don't think alignment is... I think that monstrous humanoid or animal makes more sense because in the game it can be a more concrete thing and there's less opinion of the matter.
It might, but take a look. Let's take a look back at where it all came from, because really it's a throwback if you really think about it. When the system came out and really got popular in the 60s, it was very basic. It was your good versus evil. It was your group of adventurers going off to destroy evil. I think that's really where the system stemmed from and where it stayed. And so it's a matter of fantasy gaming in general. I mean, look at anything that's ever been based out of it or it's been based on. I mean, you've got your Tolkien, you've got your... I don't know what else. Really, Tolkien's all I know. But think about it, let's take The Hobbit or Lord of the Rings as an example. You've got your very clear-cut good and evil characters, one versus the other. And so I think that's really where it all stemmed from. Since then, it's just every edition it's brought back and changed a little.
That's not enough for me to think it should still be included, or for me to include it in the games I run, because
I think we need to caveat this real quick here. I mean, I think we need to explain to anyone listening the types of games that we have played for long periods of time, as this might be very well coloring our view on the alignment system within Dungeons and Dragons.
Okay, go ahead.
We, as a group now, have been playing White Wolf for many, many years. Where there really is no set alignment system, where it is basically all gray territory. So for us, there is kind of very difficult...
I'm going to say to you, I do not like the morality system in White Wolf either.
Alright. Mind blown.
What morality system?
As the storyteller, I feel that the morality system that says hurting someone, period, should require a roll, whether or not it's done in self-defense or whether or not it's done in...
So you're talking humanity.
I'm talking humanity. I'm talking wisdom. Where in wisdom and mage, in mage and magic, Mage the Awakening, using magic...
We've fully shifted into White Wolf now.
using magic to hurt a person is worse than, or as bad as hurting someone intentionally. It's a worse sin than just punching someone. That's the way it reads, at least on the morality.
Well, they do that because as a mage, you're superhuman, and you're more powerful than a mortal. So if you hurt someone with it, then it is more of a sin.
Right, but
it's
if
abuse of power.
If you're a professional boxer and you have a hard time not pounding someone's brain into goo when you hit them, right?
Mm.
And you have a more nimble way of stopping them in their tracks without using by using magic. Are you being more moral by punching them in the face just because magic is more powerful and unaccessible to the person.
No, but once again, that's where we come into the whole gray area and guidelines and not hard set rules at all times.
But you know what, Rob? I have to back up 1 second here. You said that White Wolf doesn't have a morality system, but it actually has like 13 morality systems. World of Darkness has your basic, what is it, humanity in here?
Humanity.
Okay. You get into Mage, you've got your wisdom scores. You get into, let's say, Vampire.
Also humanity.
I'll be perfectly
but
honest
it's
with you.
different sets of sins.
Right.
Every
level
time
has a
that I've
sin.
gone to play a White Wolf character, though, that's been one of the farthest things from my brain.
Clearly, by the characters you've played, that's true. I don't think, aside from the one character who you decided this is my wisdom character, I think they've all been falling into pits of pornography and murder and alcohol
First
and
of all, there
drugs.
was no. Well, maybe.
There was some pornography. It might have been live pornography, but it was there.
Okay, fine. Yes, that's fair enough. I do tend to be the one in our group who plays the not so light side characters, with a bit of a shady past or shady present or
Plans for a shady future.
yeah, maniacal plans to take over the world.
Okay.
So yes, I am a little accustomed to kind of ignoring the traditional rules that are in place as far as those systems go. But at the same time, though, they're much less intrusive, I want to say, than your alignment system in Dungeons and Dragons, though.
Of course, but they're a lot stricter, I feel. And let's even go here. I have the book out for World of Darkness. I don't know what the hell version this is.
New World of Darkness.
Okay, New World of Darkness. Your base value is 7, so everybody starts off at a 7. So where petty theft is considered a sin for you. If you are a better person, let's say you've got a score of a 10. Selfish thoughts. Your character can't have selfish thoughts. How do you even quantify that?
That's what I'm talking about.
In the
how
system.
do you quantify that? I guess it's a role-playing challenge, but to me it's a really boring role-playing challenge.
Yeah, trying to be Mother Teresa, basically. Actually, she wouldn't even fit on this chart as I'm looking at it.
But here's my thing, right? Here's my thing, is that because the morality systems exist, players fixate themselves to one end of the spectrum or the other, or to a certain point on the spectrum, and they use that as their guideline for what they do, and use that as a point of conflict between players. But
that's only if you have players that are playing archetypes, though.
Certain people in general have a tendency to play one archetype or another. In general, I have a tendency to play very gray area characters, but it becomes
I would say you have a tendency to play chaotic characters.
Gray area. My point though is that the conflict between a paladin and a necromancer, or a vampire and a human, shouldn't be whether or not they're on the good or evil side, or on the high morality scale or the low morality scale. The conflict should be, I don't like that you killed that guy, or I don't like this, or I don't like that you stole that thing from that person.
All right. Well, with that in mind, let's shift gears. Let's move back to the D&D conversation. If you have a paladin, paladins, mechanically speaking, are supposed to be a lawful good alignment only, right? That's one of the restrictions you were talking about.
Yep.
And if you have a necromancer, theoretically, his alignment is going to be somewhere between, chaotic or neutral, and definitely evil attached to it, because he's desecrating the dead and bringing them back to life, and breaking the whole balance of the world.
Not
No,
necessarily.
not yet. Hold on. Different system you're talking about. Hang on. So, they are good and evil, and they are fighting because they hate each other, but they're not fighting because you're evil, I'm going to kill you. No, it's you're evil because you're desecrating the dead.
I don't agree, though, because I've heard plenty of times, I don't like you because you're evil. But there's been no in-game proof of that morality. Where the character has done nothing but wear a dark robe and use some spells that drain energy.
Some of our, prior group members may have jumped to conclusions.
No, but that's the thing. You're saying prior group members, like, it's common only to us, but I've seen it in games that I've seen at cons. I mean, like, this is not an uncommon thing. This is not a people-limited thing. This is a common personal personality archetype of a role-playing person.
Being the player who's typically wearing the black robes, and being on the other side of the table of such accusations, yes, I personally have seen players jump to conclusions. Whereas...
Well, you're just shady, man.
my characters are... One of my favorite archetypes to play is the anti-hero, when it comes right down to it.
Right.
And for the most part, he's not going around kidnapping babies and stealing from the town church. But at the same time, though, you know that there's something off about him in the background. However, there's never really too much of a reason for the quote-unquote good characters of the party to dislike him. However, it always seems like that paladin immediately hates my character.
Right.
And that's common in a lot of games. It's not in a lot of groups with a lot of players. I'm not saying that. I think the presence of the morality system is what makes that happen. I don't think that's a person flaw. I think that's a system flaw.
I completely disagree. I think that the system is set up to give you the guidelines to play the character. The person is the jackass who's taking it to that extreme. If you look at a situation like, where you had an old game that me and our friend Alec played, okay, where he was a lawful good paladin, and I was an assassin, a shadow mage assassin, and we were teamed up together, and he would, even though he was this, really huge lawful guy, he was a cleric of some powerful goddess, he didn't dislike me because I was evil. He knew damn well I was evil. It radiated right the hell off of me. But instead, he chose to make that more of a "I'm going to help you and convert you" situation.
But again, you're talking about a opposing morality system based off of a game mechanic. Like, why? Like, what did your character do that was so evil? Like, on a regular, did your character do things that are evil? I shouldn't say that. We don't want to get into gaming details.
Yeah.
But did your character on a regular basis do evil things?
Prior to the game, his backstory was that he was an assassin.
Right, but if your character is not regularly doing evil things in the game,
right,
then where does the conversion actually come in?
Then throughout the game, as you're not doing evil things, I mean, that's part of this social contract you keep talking about. Over time, as I stopped committing evil acts and I started committing better acts, selfless things, helping other people, not taking a reward here and there, that's when the character over time started shifting. And eventually, me and the GM came to a conclusion of, you know what? You're not really evil anymore. So it's either a conversation you have, or at some point the GM decides that, oh, someone cast this spell, and hey, look, it didn't work on you. You have that epiphany moment where your character made that turnaround.
I would argue that it makes more sense that your character, that you just do the same thing that you did without there being a game mechanic to say you are evil.
But why
at
do you
the same
the
time,
game
though,
mechanic?
I mean, it kind of can also boil back to real world here. Stereotypes.
Yeah.
When it comes right down to it, I mean, and an assassin from way back in the day, it can be a stereotyped evil, and that's why a paladin may have presumptions about that person. Same way you might have presumptions about another ethnicity in the real world if you are a...
Yeah, but honestly, to defend Mike on that one, the stereotype, whether it's there or not, the game mechanic itself still exists. And so that's, I think, where he has the issue.
My issue is that the presumption comes based off the game mechanic, not off the character concept. See, just to give you guys an idea of where I'm coming from, there was a White Wolf supplement that promoted the idea that rather than have a morality system, your actions should affect your relationships. Bringing this back to Dragon Age 2 or the BioWare games,
right.
your actions in those games affect your relationships with people outside of your character. So with NPCs, with other members of your party, whether or not they're loyal to you or not, that, I think, is the ultimate indication of a morality in a game. Isn't whether or not, by some cosmos, you are defined as a good person or a bad person, but whether or not you have your fellow player characters and the world are with you or against you.
Well, see, there's also a difference between a system like that or a system like White Wolf, where you're basing it off of actual list of acts that are sins. And when you're talking about D&D, where D&D is, if you want to talk about Greyhawk, there are these otherworldly beings. You have gods of each alignment that they decided this is what the label is.
And
this
they
is
will
what
judge you.
And, well, they won't just judge you, they will smite your ass. And that's the thing, is, you know, D&D is more about, on a cosmic scale, a war of wills. It's not necessarily always about the person-to-person interactions, but sometimes it's about where are you in the greater scheme. And I think that's the biggest difference between the two systems, is that in a White Wolf system, you don't really have that. You have a real-world-based system. So you're talking about the difference between fantasy, which, I mean, if you really think about the word, this huge encompassing multiverse with gods and beings and deities and spirits, compared to the real world, two guys sitting in a bar having a fight.
Right. And I don't think that a lack of a morality system for a player character needs to necessarily affect the existence of gods which represent pure good in the multiverse.
But don't you feel, as a GM, like coming from a storyteller's perspective, do you feel that having at least a set of guidelines for your players is better than everybody just freeballing it? Because isn't there a point where, and we've had these conversations before in-game, in some of our games, where, you know, you feel that what the person is about to do is pretty much just an evil act, but the character feels like where they're coming from, it's not.
For new players and for new games and for new GMs, I think they provided a needed guideline. At this point,
I think that issue came up, though, with one of our more experienced players in the not-too-recent past, though.
I think that the issue comes up... I think that's because the system got in the way of the game. From now on, as a storyteller, as a DM, the way I plan on running it is that if you do things that align yourself with a character, that's going to affect your relationship with that character. And I expect that not only my players, but players interact with NPCs based off of that, but with other PCs based on that. So it's about, there's a social contract of, this is what our group's going to be, this is what we're going to do, and this is going to be our rough moral guide as a group.
Okay, I have a proposal. Okay? A way to adjust the D&D alignment system so that it's less restrictive, but still works mechanically for spells, abilities, and weapons. Okay? Let's say you have a neutral good character. Okay? You have the good descriptor on you, so you are generally a good person. Occasionally, you break that moral line. Maybe you see the opportunity to take something from someone, maybe withhold information that could have helped someone, whatever it is. Use the 3-strike rule. If you're a good person and you're following good alignment, and you do 3 things wrong in a certain period of time, maybe you're not such a good person anymore. Maybe you've made that change. You know, you'd have to offset it with, you can always gain back your good status for the equal number of positive
pay 100
acts.
gold to your local church and remove 1 strike.
No, but you we're not talking about Catholicism here, alright? But if you, I mean, honestly, like, so let's say if you're a neutral character and you wind up taking a couple of weeks off of good and screwing people over, maybe you just became a neutral or a neutral evil even. And then, you know, if you realize that as a character and start trying to do the right thing again, you can kind of earn your way back over time.
I understand the sentiment, and I tried it with providing special experience points for morality alone, based off your actions. but I feel like my problem with terms good and evil in the game world is that my personal core beliefs, I have a very hard time believing in absolute good or absolute evil. There's very few people in this world who fall into those descriptors for me. And everyone in between is just a person. So, for me, using those descriptors isn't productive to forming the mental image that the game world requires.
But that's if you're assuming absolutes. Nothing is an absolute.
Here's a question for you, Jared, and I hate to have to bring up a specific character from one of our games, but this is in reference actually to one of my dark-robed, long-term characters that I played.
Go on.
Cryptic, a mage from World of Darkness.
Okay.
Played for a very long time, and part of a cabal, which I think we would all generally agree was a very good cabal. Yes?
Tentatively, yes. I will give you the yes on that.
Come on, they fought the 7 deadly sins.
Yeah, but we were all screwed up.
Screwed up,
You
yes.
had an emo character in Alex's character who had a terrible past and was a good guy even though he kind of didn't seem to want to be. Then you had me who was the tortured hero.
Did we not stop the war of New York City and create peace and harmony for
Okay.
the most part?
Again, let's work
Okay.
on the tentative yes.
Alright. For the most part, we went ahead and did
Our
a
goals
lot
were
of
noble.
good things.
The goals were noble.
Okay. But we did plenty of bad things along the way.
We did a lot of bad things along the way.
Okay. Were we evil or good?
I think we were really borderline on that.
But well, we got to make a judgment call somewhere along the line here.
But that's the thing, is now you're talking about a system where there is no good and evil. It's just a level of sin. And to be honest with you, my level of sin on that scale, I was down to a 5, which is fairly low.
Right.
I mean, I killed people for the greater good. That was my whole character's point.
But Rob's point is that if the gray area is so defined in White Wolf, right, and then you move over to D&D, and all of a sudden you do have these absolute goods and absolute evils, I don't see the huge difference between that character in terms of morality and other characters you've played, except for the existence of a different morality scale.
That's where I was going with that.
And in D&D, in every D&D game that I've ever played in or seen played, wholesale killing of other life forms is a part of the game.
Yes.
It's
a dungeoneering game. So, but here's the thing. Again, that kind of... Alright, we've had games... I don't know if you've played in them. I know, Alec and I have played in them, where we had characters who were good aligned characters, and we got to the point where we decided that maybe a good aligned character wouldn't kill everybody in their way. So we were at the point where we were literally like turning our swords to the side and taking a negative to do bludgeoning damage instead of killing someone. We were tying people up instead of murdering them, because we chose that that particular game to say that these characters have a higher standard of good than anyone else.
But this is where we get to the intersection of real life and gaming morality, right?
Well, in real life, anyone in any game would be horrible. Because even a good guy is going off to war and killing bad guys.
Right, so why bother applying a moral value to a character like a knight, a good knight, a paladin, a warrior of God? Why apply a value of morality to that character when the actual morality of that character by a real life scale is nebulous?
Well, I can respond to that with this. Why would you not apply a label to, let's say, a demon who comes out and starts torturing people and murdering?
But a demon is not a real life not representative of a person.
Alright, then let's say a person in the game goes and starts killing people just because he's bored. Is that person evil?
That would be a representative of absolute evil.
So now, is a person whose sole responsibility is to go and stop that kind of thing from happening, is that person now evil for having killed them? This is the Iraq War all over again.
This is where you get into the complex differences between different people's morality, though, because most people would probably say they're justified, right? And I would say that they are not doing the good thing, but they are doing the right thing.
Actually, according to the U.S. government, you wouldn't be able to go ahead and just kill that person. You would have to.
According to the U.S. government, I'm saying that when you get to the intersection of personal morality,
you're talking about a POW though. If you capture them, we don't get to kill. But if they're in combat, you shoot their ass.
All I'm saying is that when you get to the intersection of personal morality, you start getting when you start needing to look at someone's personal opinion for whether or not something is good or bad in a game, you get into very gray and dangerous area, especially if you're playing with people that you don't know so well. Because there are people in this world who think things are evil, which I do not think are evil. And there's people in this world who think things are good, which I do not think are good. So if I sit down at a con game and we're both playing D&D...
Can I get for example here on something that would be...
Do we really want to delve into Mike's psyche in the middle of...
on something that someone else might think is good that you don't think is good?
No, actually, I'd like the example of the opposite. What is it that you think is not evil that someone else would kind of get disgusted over?
Okay. Wait, that I think is not evil?
No. Alright, so from what you're saying, alright, if I sit down next to you at a con, right? Let's say we go to Dragon Con this year and we get into a game together. I don't know you from a hole in the wall.
Right.
Okay? Now, I'm sitting down next to you, and what is it exactly that you're going to do that's going to repulse me that you think is perfectly fine?
Well, listen, we don't want to get into all of my personal psychosis.
Not all of them, just this one particular one.
We're on the subject of
we are.
Morality.
This is morality.
And you
this
did go ahead and oust yourself.
I don't believe... Well, for example, there's people out there who believe that homosexuality is very evil.
Okay.
I don't.
Alright.
So if I were to play a homosexual character and we're playing D&D, they would automatically be like, oh, he must be lawful evil. Whereas I'm like, hey man, I'm just neutral good homosexual elf. I like this.
I would say chaotic.
Whatever. So you're talking about, and also like the other way around. There's people out there who would believe that killing people in the name of good is not evil.
Like the Crusades.
And I would say, yes, it is.
Okay. Way to be politically correct and save your ass in that one.
Yeah.
That was good. Very good move. I give you plus 2 points. That was great. Alright, I mean, obviously there's a big divide between how everyone feels about it. And, I have to say that not just because I've played Dungeons & Dragons for so many years do I agree with the alignment system. I do think it needs tweaks. I think it needs to be not such a solid, binding rule system. But the fact that you have, a sword that will harm evil, I think is awesome. I think that's a great flavor for the system, and it reinforces what is supposed to be the character's core beliefs. You know what I mean? And maybe they don't have to do it good and evil. Maybe they could just do it where if my morality and your morality are that opposed, that it'll work. That it'll do that damage.
When it comes really right down to it, if you're being struck by a sword that does extra damage to a good character or vice versa, an evil character by the other alignment, your character's not necessarily going to know that's why this sword is hurting that much more either. It's purely that, a game mechanic.
Well, no, sometimes, depending on what kind of weapon you're talking about. I mean, listen, if you're an evil mage and I come after you with a Holy Avenger, you're going to know it's a Holy Avenger.
But you could change it to make the same flavor work without it being tied to good and evil. You could say, the blessed blade of this god of justice harms evildoers, quote unquote, and it's basically anyone opposing the morality system of that god, or anyone opposing the portfolio of that god would be harmed by a blessed blade of that god.
That's exactly what we're talking about, though. You just
rephrased
it.
The difference.
You just changed it from alright, this god is lawful good, so anything that's opposed to lawful good is going to take harm because the god is lawful good.
No, what I'm saying to you is, if you have a god of freedom and water, let's say. Let's just say that
that is how portfolios work out.
It's a water deity that also embodies the concept of freedom. That the blade would hurt anything that is harmful to water. So I guess you could say it would hurt fire creatures, and it would also hurt anyone who is trying to restrict freedom.
So on the same token, the blessed blade of a justice god could harm people who, let's say,
break the law,
but have not paid for it.
Right. And I mean, like, there's different ways you can alter the system to make it fit.
You're just changing the wording on alignment.
No.
Well, no, actually, he's trying to break it down into more of a act-by-act thing, because it's not like, alright, if you're an evil bastard, but you committed a crime and served time, and you paid your debt to society, let's say,
mm-hmm. Then I'm no longer an evil bastard if I...
No, you still have evil intent.
Oh, okay.
You still want to go...
maybe I had reformed.
No, that's not how... In fact, you probably met new people and got worse. But now, that sword isn't going to hurt you, but if the guy next to you hasn't served his term out yet, it's going to do some extra damage to him. So you can walk around a jail cell poking people to see who's repented or not.
But this way, for me, like, I mean, people change. That's a core part of my personal belief system. So it's difficult for me to say that my character's holy sword will always hurt this one dude, right?
But what if
people's
that dude...
alignments change too, though?
But what if that guy gets better?
Part of the game is that creatures do not have the capability to change.
The base creatures do not have the capability to change. The base creature. If you have a creature who comes out of a demi-plane, and that creature's natural alignment is going to be neutral evil, there's nothing saying that particular creature can't turn around and become neutral good. And I'll use the example of the elf. Right? If you look up elf in the monster manual, and I'm just shooting off, hope to God I remember this right, that description is going to come up with a full monster entry, and it's going to have an alignment, which is usually neutral good. Not every elf is neutral good. In fact, a lot of them aren't. So that's just a base. And if you as a GM decide to change that, that's up to you. I mean, that's going back to what Rob said about stereotypes. That entry in that book, that's a stereotype.
Alright, I'll give you that. But talking about alternate ways of doing things, since we started kind of exploring this a little bit,
I think we should get into that, because I think we're coming up with something good here. We can, copyright. Patent pending.
I kind of feel like if you take karma points from something along the lines of Fallout, right? And you have someone who's doing all these things which are good or evil, right? So you have this guy who's going around, he's stealing shit, and he's getting his karma points, he's racking up that bad karma, right? A cool way to use a holy sword or a justice sword would be the number of points they rack up in negative karma is the amount of damage done to them, or it's the amount of damage potentially done to them out of that pool.
Okay. So essentially, to turn the morality actions into a game mechanic based off of a weighted system. So the worse you are, the more it's going to hurt.
Yes. That does still involve the complications of people's personal morality colliding with the game, but at least that way you can have very specific instances where a player can say to a GM, will this net me good karma or bad karma? Well,
obviously there's a whole lot more we can go on with this, but I think that's going to be pretty much where we stop for the day. Maybe if we feel so inclined, we'll go on the blog and add a little bit on there. We are going to have some posts coming up from Drendel, as we know him, Jay. Once we post this up, he'll be posting some blog posts as well. So go back to the blog. It's going to be noordinaryobsession.wordpress.com. Thanks for joining us tonight, and we hope you tune in again next time. Episode 1.
Have a good night.
Good night.